Welcome back to my Audi 1.8 Turbo Swat 1999 Nissan Micra that used to belong to my nan. In the last video we finished off the bonnet stay, so now the bonnet shuts, and we test fitted these bucket seats. Right, so next up on the list we're finally going to get the oil filter relocated, and the reason I want to do that first is because what I want to do after that is try and start to handle the wiring and get it more permanently installed. And I don't want to be having to trying to crank the engine to make sure things work if I don't have an oil filter installed, and I can't install the oil filter if the radiator is installed because the oil filter hits the radiator without the relocation kit. So we're going to go and do that today. Now I know I've spoken about this oil filter relocation kit like 3 times before, but not actually gotten around to installing it. Well, now's the time. We're actually going to do it. Okay, so here's the kit. If you've seen my videos before, you've already seen this like a couple of times, but just to recap for those that are new, we've got, actually let me just unbag these, much better. Okay, so we've got the takeoff plate here with the mushroom cap, and then this basically takes the place of the oil filter as it would be installed on the engine. And then we've got the AN adapters that come off of the side of there like that, and some washers. And then here is the remote filter head. So we can put this wherever we want. The one that comes with the kit though, which is this one, isn't actually fit for what we need it for. And the main reason for that is because the ports are on the opposite sides. So where I want to install the filter head is down here, right off the side of the chassis leg on the passenger side. Now if I was to try and put down the filter head that came with the kit, which is this one, if I put that there like that, that fits, but I've got no room. If you see, there's hardly any room there before it hits the gearbox, and also the front structure there. These 90-degree AN fittings are just not tight enough. So yeah, look, that's just not going to fit. So I ended up deciding not to use this, and I was looking on the website where I got this, and I was looking to see whether there was one that perhaps just had the mounting plate here, but then having the ports come straight out the front, and they just don't seem to do anything like that. So I had to do the next best thing, and I got this instead. So this has the ports on the same side of the filter head, which is what we need. But the compromise is that the mounting plate is perpendicular to it and not on the opposite side of it. So we can get around that by just making a bracket. So that's what I'll do. So it's meant to fit like this onto wherever we need it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bracket that comes off there like that. And then these will just have a straight shot to the engine where the original oil filter was, and then we should still be able to get to it from underneath the car nice and easy. With the front of the car removed for better access, I can get a good look at what I'm dealing with. You'll notice that the threaded pipe has gotten a little cold. That's because since I've removed the factory heat exchanger, the pass-through pipe it left behind was too long, so I've replaced it with a shorter version. But it's still plenty long enough, thanks. Removing that heat exchanger drastically lowers the profile of the whole assembly and cleans up some of the coolant piping in this area. The oil will be cooled by an external oil cooler later on. Before any of that though, it's very important that the oil flow is figured out now. Spin-on oil filters like this one have oil come in through the outside of the filter, through the filter itself and then up through the middle. Behind the entry holes, many filters have a diaphragm that acts as a one-way valve, designed to prevent oil from draining out of the filter when the engine isn't running, especially when installed with the opening facing downwards. If I get the ports mixed up, then oil will try to go through the filter in the wrong direction, and that anti-drain pack valve effectively acts as a brick wall, starving the engine of oil and killing it in seconds. The rubber seal on the takeoff plate goes up against the filter housing on the engine, and the mushroom cap has its own O-rings that seal up against the other side of the takeoff plate as it screws down. I can also orient the thing however I want, which is useful for later. Since oil enters from the outside ring and the cavity in the casting connects with this port, we know that this is the outlet that would lead towards the remote filter head. Oil should then re-enter through this port, which leads to the cavity on the other side, allowing oil to pass through the holes in the mushroom cap and up through the middle back into the engine. On the filter head, unlike on the takeoff plate, they actually cast in a flow direction arrow, which was nice of them. And sure enough, that port leads to the outside ring where it can enter the filter unimpeded, then out through the middle and the other port. Easy. Both pieces use these M22 to -10 adapters, along with bonded washers to keep everything inside. And with the larger spanner I have access to, these go on, but not before starting them off by hand to avoid cross-threading. Alright, we've got our fittings on. I had to use the big boy 27mm spanner to get them on, but that's fine. Now that these are on, we can take our dash 10 AN fitting that we have here, and these will now just screw on like that. There we go. And then we just need to have a pipe that comes off of there, same on both sides. Cleaning off the mating surface and lightly oiling the O-rings as per the instructions means I can tighten this down until it pinches up, then tighten by a further 270 degrees. Come on. Okay, so I've been toying with the idea of doing this for a little while, but because I didn't really know what ancillaries I was planning on running, I kind of wanted to leave this. But I figured this part probably isn't too hard to get hold of anyway. I know I'm not going to be running air conditioning, which would normally fit here. Not because I don't want air conditioning, I would love air conditioning, it's just not going to fit. There's no way I'm going to be able to shoehorn that in the engine bay, so we can't keep that. Power steering, which would normally bolt here, is something, again, a nice to have, but I've steered this thing whilst moving it around the complex, and it actually seems okay even at low speed. So I don't think I need power steering. So what I'm going to do is, because I know that the alternator mounts here, these two bolts here, we need to keep those two holes and we need to keep these two holes. So there's 4 points of contact onto the side of the engine block, and then anything below that can be cut. So I'm going to draw a line about there. Anything below that is getting lopped off. If I decide that I do want to put power steering back in, then I can always revisit that later on and I can potentially come up with some other solution, but at the moment, it's getting the chop. You know when a tool just gets in your way? That has properly gotten stuck. Like, I've gotten this down to an art now, I do this all the time. Every time I use it, I've got to retension the belt, put it back on the wheel, make sure the tension's right, put the screw back in, check it works, and then very carefully lower it back down onto the piece again. I need to realign it because it shifted a little bit. I can't get that straight again now. Right, I think we got it.
So, what was all that in aid of?
Once I put the intercooler back on, I noticed that the pipe that comes out of it, the intended path for that thing is to go through there and then straight up there, out the top of here, and then into the intake. Now, if I have this where I want it to be, let me just juggle some things. So I've got the filter head with the filter on it and then one of the AN lines. If I want to put this where I want to put it, then not only am I very close to the starter motor, basically the filter's going to be in the way, you can see there, look. Basically I'm going to have to try and sneak the intercooler piping past this, plus I'll have a radiator fan like right here. What I'd like to do instead is move it to the other side, and the filter can go there in its place. It'll be out of the way of anything, and it'll still be accessible from underneath the car. The only problem is, the filter head I've bought is a left-hand one, and I should have bought a right-hand one. When I picked this thing, I wasn't really sure what side I needed, because I knew I was going to be running it at 90 degrees anyway, back when I was going to put it in the original position. So I just basically closed my eyes and pick one, and that was the wrong decision. I should have got the one that comes out the other side, because then it would have made a nice straight shot to the takeoff plate. So what I'm going to have to do is use the filter head that came with the kit, which is the one that comes out on either side. So here it is with the filter attached, and that will go quite nicely underneath there with a little bracket. I have changed my mind again. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to basically use the same filter head as before, except this time I'm going to mount it to this side on the chassis leg. I'm going to make a bracket that goes there. So now we've got our AN lines that are going straight, in a straight line, straight to our takeoff plate. I've not been able to clock the takeoff plate the way I like because the bracket for the plug for the crank angle sensor is in the way, so I'm going to have to relocate that, no biggie. Crank angle sensor is actually all the way over there, so the wire can just go straight up. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I kind of liked the idea of adding it onto the engine because it meant that the whole assembly was attached to the engine, so if I needed to pull the engine I wouldn't need to remove anything. But I think I'm going to come up with a compromise for that should still work. So let's get a bracket made. You know, I'm just about to start recording and then a fly makes its way in here. There's been no flies for the entire time I've been here, which has been about half an hour. As soon as I'm about to hit record, a fly comes in. Right, it's just started raining, so sorry if you can hear that in the background. So I've made this bracket. It's basically just a simple folded piece of steel with some holes for lightness and also for attachment. These 3 holes at the back here are for attaching the filter head. So they go through those holes and it will attach in there like that. And then these holes in a line at the back here are for attaching to the chassis itself. I actually only need 2, but I drilled 3 just in case. And then the holes at the top are just for, well, to look nice, really. So what we need to do now is work out a way for us to attach this to the chassis in a way that is easy for it to get to, if I need to. And a thing that I came up with is using these. These are just like rubber, sort of grommet things. This takes an M6 bolt, and then on the bottom here we have a rivet nut which will go into the chassis. So in order for this to work, I need to open these holes out to about 19 millimeters, and then I also need to keyhole them slightly so that we can slide them on and then push them along. And then in order for them to locate and actually have a strong attachment to the chassis, I then need to make like a thing that comes off of there and then bolts into the top of the chassis rail. So it means that we can easily remove this from the chassis. Actually, I've decided bollocks to that. I'm not going to bother with this, and the reason why is because the amount of work I would have to do to keyhole these out with the tools that I have, with the holes already existing, is going to take way too much time, and I'm already really behind schedule on this because I've just not been able to get up here for the last couple of weeks. Which is the reason why this video is taking so long to come out. Basically, what I'm going to have to do is I'm just going to hard mount this to the chassis. I think getting a socket in there is not going to be a big issue. I put these holes in a very specific place so that, let's see if I can do this one-handed. If I put this in its place, I've deliberately spaced these holes so that you can get a socket behind there. And to then try and engineer this to work, it would just take an entire day, and I've got other stuff I need to do. So this is one of those decisions I'm going to have to make where I have to forego engineering fanciness for the sake of just getting it done. And I need to do this more because I am conscious that I tend to put too much effort into things that really don't need the effort putting in at this stage. That doesn't mean I can't go back and do this. I can you know, put these things in and I can redo this. If I had a way of like laser cutting these out accurately, then this would be a lot easier. But because I have to use a drill, a step drill, it's going to catch on that hole. It's just not going to work. So I'm just going to hard mount it and I'm just going to get this done. And rather conveniently, there's already a hole here. Not sure what it's for, but it's already there from the factory. It is actually already the right size for this hole here, but because I'm going to be using a rivet nut, one of these, I need to just bore the hole out just a little bit, just to let that come through. And then I just need to put another hole over on this side. And then that's this mounted. So one thing to consider, because we've got rubber lines coming from here to over here, we need to make sure that the angle of approach isn't so much that it's going to cause any problems with the bend. It's quite a short distance between here and here, so any changes, any angles are going to be worse off because of that short distance. A little bit more. A little bit more. Too much, but should be okay. Right, remote filter head has been fitted and it's nice and strong. There is a bit of a casualty. I was using this thing. It's just a deburring tool to clean out the hole, get rid of any burrs. And with that, you have to put quite a lot of force into it to get it to clean it out. And I must have, it let go, and then my thumb collided with that really sharp edge that I created earlier when I cut this bracket off. And it sliced my thumb pretty bad, so I nearly died. Let's see how easy the filter goes on. So normally what you do is you'd go from underneath, but because the car's so low to the ground at the moment, we'll just pretend that I'm doing that. I can't really see what I'm doing, but there we go. That goes on really easy, doesn't collide with the engine. Plenty of room to get under there from underneath. So changing the filter is going to be trivial. Doesn't get in the way of the belts as far as I can tell. Alright, so now that we've got the filter mounted nice and solidly, next thing on the list is to connect the outlet of the takeoff plate to the inlet of the remote filter head. Now I know I've already banged on about it enough, but it is really important that we get this right. So I've already marked where the outlet is with an arrow. So this one is the outlet and this is the inlet. And it just so happens that they are on the same side, which is really convenient. So all I need to do is just make a very short rubber hose that goes from here to here, and then the same on the other side. So let's do that next. The nylon braided rubber hose I'm using here comes with the kit. You can also get the hose in PTFE, which is often used for fuel, and steel braided versions of either in a range of diameters. This hose is -10, which means 10/16 of an inch, or 5/8 if you want to simplify it down. Rubber hose uses a compression fitting. The hose itself fits into the socket, which is then tightened down onto the main body. You're supposed to use special tools to put these together. These tools are made of relatively soft aluminium, which helps prevent the fitting from taking damage during assembly, like you see happening here, despite my half-assed attempt to stop that from happening. Okay, we have the lines made up. Am I happy with them 100%? No, I did still manage to scratch these up. It's actually really hard when you don't have the right tools for the job, so always get the right tools for the job. This, this sort of S curve that it's doing is, I don't know, I'm not sure if that's too bad or not. I guess we'll find out. It's all right coming out of here, but down here it's kinked just the smallest amount. I don't know if that's just the braid bunching up or whether it's actually causing any problems. So what I want to do is just to sanity check that I've got everything correct. So we've got the outlet here, this is all tightened down now. So the inlet of the filter head is here. what should happen is oil should come out of there. If that's what happens, then that's great, because that's what we need to happen. So I haven't connected this line yet. So what I'm going to do is I've attached the battery, and I've gone back to this ghetto setup again, where I've got the just the ignition live on here, and then I've got just a cable, just an exciter cable to try and crank it over. I've taken the spark plugs out and the ignition coils, so it should spin over quite freely. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop a little container in front of there, catch any oil that comes out, and then if oil comes out of here, then I know we're good to go. I'll connect that line and we should be golden. Spoilers, it works, but idiot me forgot to hit record, so let me just demonstrate that it works. Nice. So what that tells us is two things. First of all, it tells us that we've got this correct. It tells us that the oil is able to get into the filter and be able to come out of the filter unobstructed, so we know we don't have any problems with that non-return diaphragm stopping the oil from coming through. We know that this is the outlet, and we also know that there aren't any obstructions, like I don't think this is too much of a problem as it is right now. There's also no leaks coming out of it. I guess we'll find out when it builds up decent pressure when the engine's running, but for the moment I've got no concerns. So now I'm just going to attach this again, and that completes the oil circuit, so we should be good to go now. Okay, everything's all connected up now. As you can see, I've completely ruined the finish on these AN fittings. It's purely just because the only spanners I've got that will fit on these are this one here, which is a very good spanner, but just steel, and then this one, which is just not a good spanner at all. Steel spanner on aluminium fittings, and one of them being adjustable is a recipe for, well, this. So yeah, they look bad, but they're sealed up properly. It took an absolute age, but we got there. Let's just do a quick test. So I've got my test lead over here again. And that's no leaks that I can see. Enough pressure is built up in here, and also enough time for oil to circulate through the system back into the takeoff plate again and back into the engine. Oh, the starter motor making that weird noise is because it probably needs replacing, but still works okay for the moment. So yeah, I think that's another thing ticked off the list. So we now have a fully contained oiled engine again, which means I can now crack on with the electrical stuff, because without having a proper closed oil system, I wasn't able to start the engine up or even crank it. So now that this is out of the way, I can now crack on with that. And then once we've got that radiator done, I can start getting coolant pipes and everything, start connecting things up over here and over there. You know, we can get some coolant flowing through the thing, and we can actually run the engine for a decent amount of time. Now the next thing I want to tackle is a problem I've created for myself since I moved over to these new mounts, and that is that this shifter weight stops me from being able to change into all of the gears. As you can see, it collides with the top of the mount. Now, I haven't actually finished this mount up yet. You can just about see down there, there's like 5 or 6 tack welds holding the whole thing together. It needs fully welding out, and I could cut like a bit of a ridge off there, but I don't think I want to do that. What is a fairly common mod for the Mark IV platform and the O2J gearboxes and all that is to actually just cut this off entirely. It's just like an NVH thing. I think it's supposed to give a little bit more weight to the shifter. No, maybe it gives a little bit less weight to the shifter. Yeah, I think that's how it works. Anyway, I'm just going to cut it off here because I don't think I need it. Bear in mind that this is a broken shift tower. It doesn't like return properly. The spring's broken in it. I've got another one that is working, which still has this intact. So if this ends up being a problem, doesn't matter. I'll just put the other one on, no problem. So let's lop that off. I'll probably take a little bit more off there a bit later on, but that's the most I can take off safely without hitting anything else. Let me just pop these back on. Now I did adjust this not too long ago. In fact, after I put the engine back in. So this should already be pretty good. Let's have a look, see if I can get all the gears now. Third's always been a little bit difficult to find. I don't know whether that's just because the shift tower is broken. First feels fine, second feels great. Third doesn't really want to go in unless I wiggle it, and then eventually I find it. Fourth is fine. fifth is really notchy. There's like a distinguishable notch that I can feel, and not a good one. Reverse. I don't know. But I can get in all the gears, so that's much better than nothing. So I've got the front end back together, sans radiator of course, and we can see inside of here everything all fits quite nicely. I've got plenty of room for my boost piping to go past the filter. Hopefully I won't have to go underneath the filter, because then it means it would have to remove a boost pipe to take the filter off, but maybe we won't have to do that, we'll see. This pipe here, this hose, I was initially a bit concerned about the way that that's kinked slightly, or the angle isn't ideal, but then I remembered that my plan is to add a cooler in line with this whole thing. So at the moment we've actually taken the factory cooler off. It's not there anymore, so there is no oil cooling, and my plan was to intercept one of these lines and send it off to a air cooler, which is probably going to sit about here. That'll fit quite nicely down there, hanging off of this bracket here, or maybe off the top of this. What that will let me do is I can just take a 90-degree off of there to come up and over, or through, however I'm going to do it, and then another one off of there. So basically all of the stress that's on here, because this is the more extreme of the two angles, the one behind it you can just about see is nowhere near as bad, just because of this is like level with the car and this is pointing in an angle. The point is, this is the one that is the feed, so I'll come off of here towards the cooler, and this tiny line won't even exist. So I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, by all means, comment anyway, because I need the engagement, but, you know, I've already thought about it. Don't worry about it. I think that's going to do it for this one. I've got quite a lot more going on. I actually recorded quite a lot of footage, but I've not put it in this video because none of the stuff I've done is actually finished enough that it's worth actually putting in an episode at this point. So in the next episode, you're going to see some more electronic stuff. You're going to see the dashboard come out about 11 times. So yeah, I just want to thank you all for coming back and watching the video. If you have any thoughts on anything, by all means, stick a comment in the comment section. Otherwise, drop a like on the way out, and I hope that you will return for the next one.